If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
48.
Willing to die for.
48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self? The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die for.
The family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing to die for.
Tribal self.
48.
I'm talking about those movies, those yet unborn.
Same class over and over, the same people over and over, the same.
Well, that's your fault. You chose that shit.
I know.
Against my better wishes.
I'm in no position to complain. I'm just telling you that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think y'all need to understand, because I've heard both of y'all complain about that. What would you call it when you keep doing something over and over? And I ain't talking about insanity. Repetition. Y'all always complain about the repetition, but one thing y'all think y'all fail to realize is that this level of revolution is repetitious. You got to understand that not only are we trying to, if you being a revolutionary, not only are you waking up the people that you're dealing with now, but there are new people that's going to be born in the matrix that you have to wake up. It never stops.
Right.
It's ongoing.
That's what.
Yeah, they're still growing people in pods. These people are waking. These people are literally being born, and you're watching men walk around and flip flops and bonnets, and they don't consider themselves homosexuals. You're watching. You seeing the consistent programming of the people. This is not a thing that's ever gonna stop. It doesn't stop. It continue. Revolution. The word. That's what it is. So then I think maybe E realize that and say, you know what? I'm out. I don't want to do this forever. Because this is what you will have to do. This is part of the science of revolution. It's part of it. Another thing that y'all were just talking about, because y'all were talking about the when he was saying that you should be further along your development than he is as far as living off the land and things of that nature. I think it all depends on what War's end game is, because he has to have an end game. Matter of fact, he does have an end game, whether he realize it or not. If he don't realize it, then he follow. Then 9 times out of 10, his end game is part of the program. If he hadn't decided what his own end game is, it's part of the program. He's operating like Morpheus in the Matrix, thinking he's trying to find the one, and he's just actually participating in the program that's been designed and don't realize it. The second thing is if he do realize it and has created himself an end game, then everything that he's doing should be a part of trying to bring that end game to life. Going to work every day. Hell, if we was to see War standing on the stage shaking the hands of President Trump, it should be part of the end game.
But at a certain point, well, I guess there's a third. You said it's either he's got an end game or it's a part of the program, but then there's the realization or the idea that the process is the end game. It's like I'm at my end game. My end game has to been to live a certain lifestyle. So all I'm doing is tweaking and developing the processes going on. So I'm at the end game every day. So if in my head, and yeah, I agree with everything you said. And he knows it. He's the sensei. So for him going out and doing it over and over, in my head, that's his end game. And that's kind of where we kind of, I don't say friction or bump heads or anything, but it's like, stop doing that shit. That game is old news. Do some shit for yourself. Go do what you do. You've earned, the right to continue your evolution in a direction that's not this. That you put in the work and whatnot and da. Reward yourself.
What if this is his reward?
I'm saying I'll say that's the problem.
What if this is the reward? What if this is because if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and we define human drive based on that, at the top of that pyramid is self-actualization. People People are looking for purpose. They're looking for a reason for being. They wanna, well, I ain't gonna say everybody because some people just gave up on that, but for the most part, a person wants to be able to leave an effect, you know, I'm not even gonna say that that's purely negative ego driven because I can't say it's not coming from the ego.
Right.
I can't say it's not. But when we hear the word ego, we always think something bad. We don't realize, like in the Quran, it shows us the I want to say evolution, but that ain't a good word. It shows us the mutation of Shaitan. You know, he starts off as Iblis in the Bible. He starts off as Lucifer, but he starts off as Iblis in the Quran. And then he had this conversation with Allah. And when he has this conversation with God, the conversation essentially is God came into the midst of the hierarchy, and he told everything in existence to bow to the man that he had created, and everything bowed but Iblis. And when Iblis refused to bow, you know, Allah turned to Iblis and said, "Hey, why haven't you bowed to my creation?" And Iblis said, bow to him? Man, he's made from dirt and water. I'm made from fire, a smokeless fire. He should bow to me." And then Allah got angry with him and said, "Get ye down from here, Iblis." And I'm going to the story because I'm going to go into some symbolism. "Get you down from here, Iblis. Get ye down." So he dropped. And from then on, he was no longer called Iblis. They started in the scripture, I mean, in the Quran, they started calling him Shaitan. And many Quranic scholars explain that everything that we just seen was an ancient Arabic way to explain the psychology of human beings. You know, everything that we just seen in that story, just saw in that mythology. We didn't have psychology at the time, you know, but so they were trying to explain what was going on in the human mind and in the human psyche. And in that story, God is the highest consciousness of man. The physical person, the personality, the person that I know as War or the person that I know as E is the man that God created. That's why he created him from the dirt or from the mud, from the clay that's able to be molded and malleable and changed as I see fit. I could turn myself to a bodybuilder today, a boxer tomorrow. I could be a supervisor at a warehouse. I could be a janitor. I could do whatever I want to do with this thing because it's malleable. You know what I'm saying? The angels in this story represent the senses of man. Because if the senses, my ability to smell, taste, touch, feel, my emotions, things like this, if these things don't submit to the man and the man submit to those are things that bring about addiction, weaknesses, undiscipline, things of that nature. That's why God said, "Submit to the man that I've created." Not so Iblis. Iblis was made from a smokeless fire. Iblis was not necessarily an angel. He was what was called a jinn. And the root of the word jinn and the etymology, it literally comes from the word, it literally is the same root in the word genius, the exact same word. When we look into the Arabian Nights, the 99 stories, 99 mythological stories from Islam. When we look at these stories, y'all done heard them before. Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, Aladdin is what Disney called it. Aladdin and his magic lamp, and the symbolism of that. The magic lamp is his own head. Him shining the lamp is him gaining knowledge. The genie popping out of the lamp is his natural genius that came to life once he shined the lamp. And once you bring your genius to life, it'll give you whatever wish you desire. But Shaitan was a jinn. That's why he said, "I'm made from a smokeless fire." That fire without smoke is insight or intelligence. I'm made from that. He said he should bow to me. That's when ego drops and becomes arrogance, drops and becomes conceit, and instead it drops from that higher plane to that lower plane. You know what I'm saying? I didn't mean to get into all that. You know how I can get when it comes to etymology. But my point I'm getting at is that our ego makes us want to accomplish something lasting, something. I had a brother I haven't talked to since I've been home from prison, since he been home from prison, another one of the Uhuru Shule brothers. He reached out to me, and every time this happens, it showed me where I failed when I didn't develop something for them to come home to. I failed miserably. I don't see why. And I do see why, because I had never got out of prison before. So I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what this was going to look like. You know what I'm saying? I had never done that. So I didn't know. I'm thinking just share this knowledge with these brothers, get them these tools, and send them on their way. But it don't work like that. I was thinking yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was talking to the brother when he called me. And I told him where I failed at. And he was like, no, he called me sensei. He said, no, sensei, no, guru. He called me guru. No, guru. He always called me as guru in prison. Even when we were down there, he'd always say, I need to go talk to my guru, see what he think about this. But he said, no, guru, you didn't fail. You gave us what we were supposed to have. You know what I'm saying? If we don't come out and use it, it's our fault. And I say, I respect that, but I have failed. And I say, think about this. I say, Malcolm X went to prison. You know, he loved to drink, smoke cocaine, smoke weed, play females, hustle, con, rob, all of that. Malcolm X did all that. Malcolm Little, Detroit Red, he did it all. He go to prison. They introduce him to the Nation of Islam teachings. He started becoming strong, intelligent. I say, now think about it. Now, this is just a big what if. What if Detroit Red got all that knowledge in prison and walked out and didn't have an incubator to walk out into? What if there was no Nation of Islam for him to walk out into? What if he just walked that back into his neighborhood and his old community? There is nobody really to build with. He is the only one around in his circle that's on this stuff, and there is nobody to reinforce these new ideas. What would have happened to our Malcolm X? I would venture to say we would have never even met him. He would have never even existed. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I told him, I said, that's where I failed at. That's why, because I didn't understand that at the time. You know, and I'm understanding it more now, not only from the failures of many of the students, but from my own failures, from my own slips and weaknesses. I'm understanding how strong that having that fellowship, how strong that is with people. You know, you can't just people, the average person just don't have that ability to do it on their own. But I said all that to say this, that for War and people like War, I think the work, even when he complains about it, I think the work gives him purpose, give him a reason for being. I think War, kind of like me, you know, probably grew up around things and being entertained by things that, you know, when we watch these old martial arts movies, we see the master building others up and helping them to come out of their own weaknesses. We see these even superhero movies, Jedi movies. We see these masters helping other people overcome their weaknesses and become strong and moving toward freedom. I think we're inspired by that idea to a degree, and it makes it hard for us to completely walk away from this. Even you, E, as you're saying that you done walked away, but I see it in you when we doing these shows. You wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that because this exposes you. This shows your face. You know, I had dudes tell me, I can't remember if it was Isaiah or I think it was Isaiah. Man, y'all got E all on social media. You know, he was pretty much underground, undercover, you know, for the most part. He said, man, y'all got E all on social media. I couldn't see E on no social media. E all on social media now. You know, person could see E's face it just at least almost every week, at least twice a month on YouTube. A person can go see a new version of Brother E. And when you get into these, especially when we debating and arguing, there's some joy that come out of you. You have them, some life comes back. You know what I'm saying? So the work itself, we get frustrated because we always feel like people should be at a greater space than where they at.
Is the realization that ultimately, at least in my mind, the power of purpose is the realization that you define your own purpose. That as you go through life, part of your growth is to define and redefine what it is your purpose is. At one point, my purpose was to get out, take the word to everybody, da da da, y'all know the whole MOI, da 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 da. At this point, that's not my primary purpose. That's something I'm still involved in to whatever degree, but that's not my purpose at this point. My purpose is to live all this shit I done talked all these years, to live it out, to live this particular way. That's my purpose. So I've redefined it, you know, and that's something, you know, I know, I don't know if War remembers, but I called him on the phone one day, and you know how back in the day, I think I mentioned it to both of y'all or one of y'all, somebody, but you know how up in like New York, particularly say like peace God, you know, that's a phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always got it, but I would never say it. The hell? But I would never use it in conversation because I didn't feel like they really understood what they would say. They got it on a particular level, but I didn't want to be at that level. Seemed to be regressive for me and my understanding. I didn't want to go back to that, but I knew that there was something there that they were saying. And then I called War one day. He was in California, Like I said, I don't know if Ward remembers, but he had abandoned me by this point and went moved out to California, and I called him. When he picked up the phone, I said, "Peace, God," and he started laughing because in that moment there was an understanding that light's been clicked on,
Yeah.
that realization that ultimately your divinity is defining what your purpose is. It ain't somebody out there, it ain't somebody sitting on a throne, it's me. I define what my purpose is and work toward that purpose. So it's just, for me, to realize the self-actualization is actualizing this purpose, repurpose. That's why I think, matter of fact, as I'm sitting here talking, thinking about it, most of the shit that I have materially is shit that's been repurposed. I got cans of green beans, and I've eaten the green beans. I've taken those cans and I've turned them into a char, a biochar manufacturing little pot. Take a couple of them, work them a little bit. Boom, I got something I can make biochar with. The string that comes in the buckets that we use at work, I repurpose those strings and use them to grow things, to carry rabbit poo, to do whatever. So most everything around me is absorbing. Matter of fact, the brands that I have, on one side is an ankh, and the other side is the cross. Cross for me is death, the ankh is life. On my left, which I receive, that's where you bring your energy in. I receive the death of this world, and through my projection on my right, I project life. So I take the bullshit that this world gives me, and to the best of my abilities, I repurpose it into something living. I repurpose it and give it life. That's my purpose, is to repurpose. And in every aspect and every part of what's in my head, the things that I come in contact with, to repurpose them toward fulfilling what it is my purpose is. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. But and it's funny, war ain't really got no opinion on it because it ain't got nothing to do with war.
And I'm gonna add this. I'm gonna add this because I'm with you on that. And I said my purpose, and I think all human beings, and I think all human beings have the same purpose. We have, because we are quote unquote operating. We have individual personalities. That'd be an understatement to say, because we're not really individual, but we have individual personalities because of
Distinct.
uh, uh, our different what experiences, upbringing, things of that nature has developed this personality. And when I say personality, I mean it's the mask, it's the face that we have, it's the avatar. Matter of fact, that's it. When I say personality, I'm talking about the avatar that we've psychologically created, that we introduce to the world, because the world never really gets to see the real us. We introduce this avatar to the world that I jump in, just like on that movie with the blue people. It's Avatar. That's the name of it. But that's crazy. I'm saying Avatar. I couldn't remember the name of the movie. But just like in the movie Avatar, you know, I was using the word properly, but we jump into this avatar and we navigate our way through this world of all these different avatars. But the true purpose is to really understand who we truly are. And who we truly are, you just said it, peace God is God. And the reason why they were saying peace God, because peace is to be in a state of non-fluctuation, a state of balance, a state of harmony, a state of ma'at. And only when you're in that state can you really manifest God. So you're wishing God to actually manifest God when you say peace, God. You wishing God to manifest God. And that realization is the highest purpose of the human being. Everything else, our individual purposes, where it is liberating the community as war does, where it is the purpose that I've taken on, and my physical earthly purpose is to, and this is a lofty one, is to rebuild a black family by reorganizing black manhood. That's my purpose. And if I accomplish that, then that moves me closer to being God, because God is able to create man in his own image. God is able to say be, and it is. We look at the attributes of God, that those are the things. You'll have men speaking like you speak. You'll have men moving like you move. And that's become my purpose. And the only way I can accomplish that purpose is the strength that it takes for me the strength that it takes for me to build in myself in order to accomplish that purpose will get me closer to the purpose, which is God. Same thing with my financial goals. My financial goals, if I was to become a millionaire, there's a lot of discipline, strength, studying, strategy that I would have to learn in order to accomplish that goal, not for the $1 million, but for who I have to become in order to be able to get to that point. And I think that those things, everything, whether you become a good father and raise your children properly, whether you're a good community activist, whether you're a good husband to a woman, whether you're a teacher, if you excel at any of those things, it gets you closer to God. It gets you closer to the purpose in my mind. My mind, the true purpose is to manifest God because there's only one thing that ever existed, and that's God. And then God manifested itself in a myriad different ways. To me, the greatest thing that God created, greater than the sun, greater than the planet, is the human body, the avatar that God Himself moves through His creation in order to truly experience His creation. And it's for the avatar to wake up and realize that I'm just God having a human experience and not a human being trying to pray to God. Yeah, I think that's the ultimate purpose of man.